Ready to step off the map from the most hidden alleyways to the stories nobody told you? Uncharted Alleyways begins now. Your definitive guide and travel podcast, culture, adventure, and the world as you've never heard it. Tune in, disconnect from the obvious, and come explore with us. Uncharted Alleyways, your next trip starts here.
Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to just think about how many times you've been scrolling through your phone, like on a Tuesday afternoon, and you're just mindlessly swiping past those identical, over-filtered photos of bustling Greek islands.
Oh yeah, we all know the ones.
Right, you absolutely know the ones I'm talking about. It's the blindingly stark white buildings, the packed beach clubs with those wildly expensive sunbeds.
And the influencers?
Yes.
Yeah.
The influencers posing in like a perfectly curated line in front of the exact same blue domes.
Right, exactly.
And after a while, it all just starts to blur together into this one noisy, highly manufactured aesthetic. But today, for our deep dive, we are taking you somewhere that completely cures that travel fatigue. We are extracting a blueprint for a radically different kind of experience, and we're doing it by heading to Symi.
Which is just, I mean, Symi is a brilliant case study for this exact feeling of modern burnout. It's this tiny island in the Dodecanese, which, just for some geographical context here, means it is tucked away in the far eastern Aegean Sea.
So it's pretty far out there.
Yeah, it's practically hugging the Turkish coastline, actually.
Yeah.
And right away, that geography draws a sharp contrast to what we usually, expect from a Greek vacation.
Right, because usually you think of, I don't know, Naxos or Mykonos.
Exactly. When we picture an island like Naxos, for instance, it's all about sweeping space. It's defined by movement, wide open landscapes, those really long stretches of highway connecting massive sandy beaches.
And Symi is...
Symi is the absolute antithesis of that. I mean, it is defined by vertical cliffs, vivid pastel colors, and this profound, almost heavy sense of absolute stillness.
And that stillness is exactly what we're going to explore today. We are going to figure out how this tiny piece of rock manages to do something so rare in our, hyper-connected world. Because it's a place that politely declines to demand your attention, but somehow it quietly earns it anyway.
It really is. It's an exercise in changing our baseline pace. We aren't just mapping out a travel itinerary today. We're looking at how geography and architecture can actually force us, as humans, to slow down. How a physical environment can literally re-engineer a traveler's internal clock without them even realizing it's happening.
Which makes the actual journey of arriving there so important to this whole blueprint.
Yeah.
Because you can't just hop on a cheap flight and suddenly drop your bags at a resort in Symi, right?
No, definitely not. There's no international airport.
Right, so you have to take a 1 to 2 hour ferry ride, usually leaving from the much larger island of Rhodes. And the approach from the sea, it isn't just a commute. It's a physical reveal.
Yeah, the visual progression as you cross the Aegean is very specific. When you are standing on the deck of that ferry, just looking out at the horizon, you don't see a sprawling, welcoming city slowly coming into view.
What do you see instead?
First, you just see these imposing, barren cliffs rising straight out of the water. Yeah, and that is the island's initial defense mechanism, in a way. Yeah. It presents this raw, unyielding geography to the outside world. But then as the boat gets closer and kind of navigates toward the inlet, a little bit of color suddenly appears in the rock.
Oh, I love that.
Right. And then the shapes of structures begin to form. And finally, the entire main harbor, a town called Gialos, it just reveals itself all at once.
And the way it's described in the source, with, layer upon layer of these neoclassical houses rising directly from the water, it's striking. And it's crucial to note that these buildings aren't that standard stark white we universally associate with the Greek islands.
No, not at all.
They are painted in these incredibly rich pastel yellows, reds, deep blues, and creams. The analogy that immediately popped into my head was that arriving in Symi sounds exactly like watching an old Polaroid picture slowly develop.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. It starts dark and undefined, just this silhouette of cliffs, and then layer by layer, the pastel colors seep into view until you have this perfect, utterly still image.
The Polaroid analogy captures that feeling of delayed gratification perfectly. And that resulting stillness, that is the defining characteristic of Gialos. Even when the harbor is technically busy, like when a ferry docks or locals are just going about their day, there is a distinct, noticeable lack of urgency.
Yeah.
You have small fishing boats bobbing in the water, cafes lining the waterfront, but the ambient noise level, it just remains remarkably low.
Now, I have to stop and push back on this just a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Because there is a huge emphasis placed on this idea of, quote, doing nothing once you arrive. The ideal first day involves just walking the waterfront, listening to the sound of your own footsteps on the stone, and literally sitting at a cafe to watch the shifting sunlight change the tones of those pastel buildings throughout the day.
Sounds pretty nice, doesn't it?
Well, it sounds incredibly romantic on paper, but, I mean, is sitting still and watching the light change really a valid itinerary?
I see what you're saying.
Like, if I only get 2 weeks of paid time off a year, and I spend a massive amount of money to fly to Europe, I usually want to maximize my time. I want to see the sights, do the activities, check things off the list. I feel like sitting at a cafe for 6 hours would make a modern traveler go completely stir-crazy.
And you're hitting on the exact psychological friction that semi forces you to confront.
The friction.
Yeah, it's the anxiety of relaxation. We are so conditioned to believe that a successful vacation is one where we consume as many experiences as possible. But on semi, sitting still is the main event.
Right.
It isn't a gap in your itinerary. It is the itinerary. And it works because of how the island is physically built. Because those colorful neoclassical houses are stacked vertically up the steep cliffs, the architecture creates a natural amphitheater.
So the harbor itself acts as a stage.
Precisely. So the geography actually dictates your behavior. When you are in a massive city or even a sprawling resort town, the environment demands constant activity from you.
Like it wants you to keep moving.
Exactly. The layout encourages you to commute, to rush to the next landmark, to consume. But here, the geography forms a physical bowl that traps the stillness. You literally cannot rush away because there's nowhere to rush to.
Yeah.
It traps you in the present moment. It practically forces the modern traveler to abandon their anxious need for constant optimization and instead, just embrace pure observation.
It's almost daring you to just sit there and look at it, to let the hours pass and watch how the harsh midday sun hits a yellow building at noon versus how that same building looks washed in a soft orange glow at 4 p.m.
The changing light alters the mood of the entire harbor hour by hour. The environment is essentially asking you to let time stretch out.
Yeah.
If you lean into it, it acts as a total reprogramming of your nervous system.
I can definitely see the appeal of that kind of a nervous system reset, but that stillness down in the harbor is really just the surface of the island. If you want to see how this place actually ticks, you can't sit at a cafe indefinitely.
Right. Eventually you have to move.
Exactly. The island eventually demands physical effort to unlock its real culture. Because this harbor is built vertically into these steep cliffs, moving inland literally means moving up.
Yeah, very far up.
To get from Gialos, the harbor, to Ano Symi, the upper village, you have to climb a massive stone staircase called the Kali Strata.
And the Kali Strata consists of roughly 500 wide stone steps.
500.
Yeah, it's no joke. And it functions as much more than just a logistical route from point A to point B. It is a physical transition between two completely different worlds.
But again, thinking about the modern traveler, 500 stone steps in the Mediterranean heat, that sounds brutal.
It is a workout.
Why hasn't an island like this just blasted a road through the cliff or, built a funicular for the tourists? It seems wild that the only way to get to the upper part of the main town is by enduring a serious cardio workout.
Because that exertion is exactly what preserves the culture of the upper village. The physical effort, the literal sweat equity required to climb the Kali Strata acts as a filter.
A filter. Explain the psychology behind that.
Well, think about the day trippers who arrive on those ferries from Rhodes just for a few hours.
Okay.
They want the easiest, most digestible version of the island. They are likely going to stay right down in the flat harbor, take a few photos of the beautiful pastel houses, eat a quick lunch, buy a souvenir, and get back on the boat.
Right. The path of least resistance.
Exactly. The physical barrier of the Kali Strata separates the casual consumer of a destination from the invested traveler. If you are willing to make the climb, to put in the physical work, the island rewards you with an intimacy that the day trippers never get to see.
And you can literally see that shift happening as you climb. As you ascend these hundreds of steps, the view of bay behind you keeps evolving. First, you see the rooftops, then the curve of the shoreline, then the full, sweeping, panoramic view of the harbor below.
It's stunning.
But it's when you finally reach the top that the atmosphere completely shifts. Ano Symi is an entirely residential, traditional neighborhood. You leave behind the polished, perfectly painted pastel mansions of the harbor, and suddenly you are walking through narrow lanes, past whitewashed houses with wooden gates. There are laundry lines stretching across the sunlit alleys.
You've moved from the curated presentation into the unpolished reality of the island. There's no performance happening in Ano Symi. It is just real life.
It really feels like walking backstage at a theater.
Oh, I love that comparison.
Yeah, because you spend your morning sitting out front in the harbor looking at this beautiful, perfectly arranged, colorful set where everything is designed to be looked at. But then you climb the Kali Strata, you slip behind the curtain, and you get to see where the actual crew lives and breathes. It's where the real work of living happens.
And that separation completely changes how you interact with the locals. If you choose to actually stay overnight up in Ano Symi, you obviously have to deal with hauling your luggage up those stairs.
Which definitely deters a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely. But the payoff is absolute silence, cooler evening air, and sweeping views of the Aegean once all those day trippers vanish. And the accommodations up there reflect that intimacy.
Right.
You are mostly looking at small, family-run guest houses.
Right. You aren't booking a room at a massive corporate hotel chain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These guest houses aren't designed to impress you with manufactured traditional luxury. You won't find infinity pools or sprawling concierge desks up in Ano Symi.
Right.
But that lack of standardized luxury is replaced by personal connection and insider knowledge. The hosts running these places know the island intricately. When you stay there, you are stepping into their daily rhythm.
It completely shifts the dynamic from being a customer demanding a service to being a guest in someone's community.
Precisely.
So we have this incredible vertical dynamic between the harbor and the upper village. But what happens when you want to leave the town and explore the rest of the island? You run into another massive geographic constraint.
Yes, you do.
Because the island is dominated by these sheer cliffs dropping straight into the water, you can't really build a coastal highway.
You can't. Which means to navigate Symi, you have to abandon the land entirely. You have to use the sea as your highway.
Which blew my mind, because it means there are no traditional beach days here. You can't just load up a rental car with towels and a cooler, blast the AC, and drive to a paved parking lot next to a sandy beach.
Not an option.
Instead, you have to walk back down to Gialos and rely on small boats or water taxis to reach the secluded swimming coves. And I have to be honest, as someone used to convenience, having to wait for a water taxi just to go for a quick swim sounds incredibly inconvenient. You are entirely at the mercy of the boat schedules.
It is inconvenient by modern standards. But this is where we have to reevaluate the idea of friction in travel. We assume that a destination needs streamlined infrastructure to be enjoyable paved roads, easy access, on-demand services.
Right, we want it to be easy.
But Symi proves that a lack of traditional infrastructure is exactly what preserves the magic of a place.
Yeah.
Because you can't just casually drive to the beach. The journey across the water becomes an event in itself. The friction is a feature, not a bug.
You really do have to earn it.
You do. And the reward for that friction is profound. Take a beach like Agios Georgios Dysalonas.
Okay.
You can only approach it from the water. And as your small boat pulls in, you are greeted by these massive, near-vertical cliffs that tower hundreds of feet straight up into the sky, completely framing the cove.
That sounds incredible.
The water there is exceptionally deep, completely clear, and holds this almost unreal, vibrant hue. Because it is so geographically isolated, it feels wonderfully remote and humbling.
Just picturing that approach, sitting on a tiny wooden boat, the engine cutting out as you glide into a cove dominated by a wall of sheer rock. It makes a standard drive-up beach feel so trivial in comparison.
It really does.
And this deep connection to the sea obviously dictates the culinary culture of the island as well. The tavernas along the harbor rely heavily on whatever the small boats bring in that day, octopus, calamari, the daily catch. But there is one specific culinary detail we have to talk about. The iconic dish of the island, Symi shrimp.
Ah, yes. It is a highly specific, hyper-local specialty that you rarely find anywhere else.
The thing about Symi shrimp is that they are incredibly tiny. The tavernas lightly fry them, and then, this is the part that made me pause, they serve them to you and you eat them entirely whole.
Shell, head, tail, everything.
Everything. As someone who is used to, meticulously peeling shrimp and leaving a pile of tails on a separate plate, the idea of popping the whole thing in my mouth, head and all, is a bit of a mental hurdle.
It is, but it makes perfect sense when you understand the preparation.
Yeah.
Because they're so small and delicate, the frying process essentially crisps the entire shell. You don't need to peel them because the shell shatters like a potato chip. You
Yeah.
just eat them exactly as they are, maybe with a squeeze of fresh lemon. It's incredibly clean flavor, stripped of all complication.
And I think the reality of that dish perfectly encapsulates the entire philosophy of the island. It's wonderfully unpretentious. Think about how highly manicured and frankly exhausting dining experiences can be at other high-end tourist destinations.
Oh, absolutely.
You have foam on a plate, a chef using tweezers to place microgreens, a 20-minute explanation of the sourcing for a single carrot. Here, the philosophy is just, the sea provided these tiny shrimp today. We threw them in some hot oil, squeeze some lemon on them, eat them whole, and don't overthink it. It is so raw and authentic.
And because the food is unpretentious, the dining experience itself shifts. Meals on Symi move at a glacial pace in the best way possible. There is no hostess hovering near your table, waiting to rush you out so they can turn the table over for the next reservation.
That is the worst feeling.
Right. But here, the dinner doesn't precede your evening plans. The dinner is the evening plan. It stretches for hours, blending into long conversations as the sun goes down and the locals start gathering in the shaded cafes to play backgammon.
The rhythm is entirely social, but completely unhurried. People are actually present with each other.
That is the ultimate rhythm of Symi. Earning the view by climbing the stairs, earning the beach by navigating the sea, and rewarding yourself with that unhurried connection.
All of these elements we've talked about, the vertical architecture, the slow meals, the physical effort, the water taxis, they all build up to a very specific way of existing. But to truly understand Symi, to grasp the absolute core of what this island is, there is an ultimate moment you have to experience.
The local secret.
Yes, the local secret. It's a moment when the island is purely itself, entirely stripped of the tourist gaze.
And the beauty of this secret is that it doesn't cost a dime. It doesn't require a special booking, you don't need a VIP ticket, and you don't need a local guide. It just requires the discipline to wake up.
Exactly. The local secret is simply the act of walking the harbor of Gialos just before the sun comes up.
Wow.
In that pre-dawn window, the stillness we talked about earlier reaches its absolute peak. The air is entirely motionless. You get to watch those slow layers of morning light shift across the pastel buildings before a single water taxi fires up its engine, before a single cafe drags a chair across the pavement to open for the day.
It's magical.
There is no itinerary to follow. There is no expectation of what you are supposed to be doing.
In that pre-dawn silence, the island stops feeling like a destination designed for travelers. You realize that it is a place simply existing for itself. It isn't putting on a show.
So, bringing this all together, we've painted this vivid picture of a perfect day on this island. You wake up for the sunrise walk in the silent harbor, you grab a slow morning coffee, you endure the physical burn of climbing the 500 steps of the Kali Strata for those panoramic views, you take a water taxi to a sheer cliffside cove for a midday swim, and you end the day with an unhurried seafood dinner, crunching on whole fried shrimp.
Sounds perfect.
But why does this matter to the listener right now? If I'm listening to this on my commute in Ohio or on a treadmill in London and I have zero plans to visit the Dodecanese anytime soon, why should I care about this highly specific pre-dawn ritual on a tiny Greek island?
Because Symi is ultimately a masterclass in intimacy and detail. It teaches us a deeply philosophical lesson about travel, which applies directly to how we move through our daily lives.
How so?
We are so heavily conditioned to demand that the world entertain us. We want places to be loud, massive, packed with nonstop activities, and easily consumable. Symi proves that an experience doesn't need any of those things to be unforgettable. The real value is found in the quiet, in the friction, and in the physical effort.
Yeah.
I would challenge anyone listening to find value in the moments when a place exists just for itself, free from the heavy expectations of what it's supposed to provide for you. Symi politely declines to entertain you, and instead invites you to just be present with it.
It doesn't demand your attention, it earns it. We started today talking about the endless, fatiguing scroll of identical, overfiltered travel photos. And what we found in studying Symi is the exact cure for that modern exhaustion. It is a blueprint for observing the world rather than just rushing through it.
It completely redefines what it means to actually experience a place.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you with today, something for you to mull over when you take your headphones off. You don't have to book a flight across the agency to practice this blueprint if you were to apply, Symi time to your own city or even just your own neighborhood right now, perhaps seeking out that pre-sunrise stillness on your own street before the traffic starts, or intentionally choosing the slower, scenic, more difficult route to work instead of the chaotic highway. What hidden pastel details might you suddenly notice in your everyday life that the crowds always rush right